The small cafe sat on the corner of a busy street. Its windows fogged slightly from the warmth inside. People passed by without a glance, rushing to their offices or stopping only to grab a quick coffee. Inside, the cafe was filled with the hum of conversation, clinking cups, and the faint smell of bread and coffee beans. At a corner table, a young girl quietly peeked through the door, her stomach rumbling. She hadn't eaten in hours, and the thought of the warm food inside made her feel both nervous and hopeful. She didn't have money to buy a meal, and the thought of asking for help made her heart beat faster. But hunger was stronger than pride. Clutching the straps of her worn-out bag, she took a deep breath and stepped inside. The warmth of the cafe hit her like a wave. The chatter of people, the smell of food, and the sight of the small piano in the corner drew her eyes immediately. The piano looked old but cared for, polished and ready to play. She hadn't touched a piano in weeks, but the sight of it made her feel a strange comfort, a reminder of something she loved deeply. She walked slowly toward the counter, her shoes scuffing lightly against the wooden floor. The cafe owner looked up from the register, wiping his hands on a towel. The girl's voice was soft but clear as she asked, "Excuse me, sir, could I play a song for a meal?" She hoped she didn't sound too bold or desperate. The owner blinked, taken aback by the request. Customers nearby paused for a moment, curious, expecting a small child's clumsy performance. The owner hesitated. He had seen street performers, had heard many children play out of tune for a sandwich or a coin, and usually, he had to politely say no. But something in the girl's eyes made him pause. There was a quiet determination, a spark that didn't belong to someone asking for handouts. After a moment, he nodded slowly. "All right, one song," he said, motioning toward the piano. "But make it good." The girl's stomach fluttered with nerves and excitement as she moved toward the piano. She had been practicing in secret for years, learning from old sheet music, videos, and sheer trial and error. Her fingers were familiar with the keys, though it had been a while since she played in front of anyone. She sat down carefully, her small hands hovering above the keys. Taking a deep breath to calm the shaking she felt, she reminded herself that this was just a song, just one chance, and nothing more. The cafe slowly quieted as she began to play. At first, the notes were gentle, simple, almost hesitant, like a soft whisper across the room. People glanced up from their cups, expecting a short, unremarkable tune. But as her confidence grew, the music began to change. Her fingers moved with precision, creating melodies that seemed to float and dance in the air. The simple notes grew into complex harmonies, each one perfectly placed, filled with emotion and depth far beyond what anyone expected from a young girl. With no formal training, the people in the cafe stopped talking, some holding their cups mid-air, captivated by the sound. Even the owner leaned against the counter, eyes wide in disbelief. The music was alive, flowing through the room like a gentle river, yet powerful enough to make hearts pound and eyes tear up. The girl closed her eyes, letting herself feel every note, every pause, every rise and fall of the melody. She didn't see the people watching her. She only saw the piano and the music she loved. Minutes passed, though it felt like seconds to her. As the song continued, it wasn't a rehearsed performance, but something pure, spontaneous, born from years of practice in hidden corners and quiet nights. Every note told a story, of hunger, of hope, of dreams that refused to fade even in hard times. Patrons whispered among themselves, unable to believe what they were hearing. Some had seen many performances before, but this was different. The music was not just played, it was felt, alive in the room, touching hearts in a way words could not. When the last note faded, the cafe remained silent for a heartbeat. Then, slowly, applause began to fill the space. It started as a quiet murmur, then grew louder, until the entire room was clapping and cheering. The owner stood still for a moment, stunned, before walking over with a plate of food. He placed it in front of the girl, still speechless. She smiled, thanked him softly, and took a bite, feeling warmth not just from the food, but from the recognition of something she had always known, that her music had power. But more than the food, it was the reaction of the people around her that stayed with her. She had not expected such attention, and she certainly hadn't imagined that one small performance could change how people saw her. She realized that music had a way of breaking through walls, of making connections, and that even in the simplest places, talent could shine through. That moment in the small cafe, playing for a simple meal, became a turning point she would never forget. It was the start of something larger than herself, a moment that would eventually lead her to paths she had only dreamed of. all beginning with one simple song and a heart full of hope. After the applause died down, the cafe slowly returned to its usual rhythm. But something had changed in the air. People glanced at the piano more often, their conversations softer, as if afraid to disturb the magic that had just filled the room. The girl, feeling a mix of relief and exhilaration, took another small bite of the warm meal. It was filling, yes, but it was also a moment of triumph. She had shown something of herself, something deeper than hunger or need. As she finished eating, the girl noticed that some of the patrons were still staring at her, whispering quietly. Their curiosity was not about a poor child playing a few notes. It was something more. They were trying to understand how someone could create such music without formal lessons, without years in a conservatory. She felt a blush rise to her cheeks, but she kept her focus on the piano. The instrument felt like a friend, an extension of herself. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys, almost absent-mindedly, and the soft notes made their way into the room again. This time, the people didn't clap immediately, they just listened, holding on to each note as it hung in the air. One of the older musicians who often visited the cafe had been sitting quietly at the back, observing. He had a reputation for being discerning and critical. He had heard many young talents over the years, but there was something different about this girl. Her music was not only technically skilled, but full of emotion, of understanding, of stories that seemed to pour from her very soul. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing in focus. He wanted to see every finger movement, to understand how someone so young could command such depth and control. He realized immediately that she was more than just a talented child. She was a prodigy, someone with a gift that could grow into greatness. The girl continued to play, her confidence growing with each note. She remembered the nights spent alone, practicing until her fingers ached, teaching herself the language of the keys and the rhythm of complex pieces. She thought of the small keyboard she had begged for years ago, the quiet nights when she had no one to watch or guide her, only herself and her determination. Those lonely hours had shaped her, giving her strength and resilience. Now, in this unexpected moment, her private world of music had become real, tangible, and visible to others. Patrons who had been chatting quietly now leaned forward, mesmerized. Their eyes shone with surprise and admiration. One young man who had been scrolling on his phone put it aside completely, unable to focus on anything but the unfolding performance. Some older women whispered to each other about how rare it was to hear someone play with such emotion at such a young age. Even the cafe owner, who had been skeptical at first, watched with a mixture of pride and amazement. He had only expected a simple tune for a meal, and instead, he had witnessed something extraordinary. As the song reached its crescendo, the girl's emotions poured through her fingers. She felt the music in every part of her body, every memory, every struggle, every dream. She didn't think about the applause, the recognition, or the meal anymore. She thought only of the music and the story it could tell. Her performance was a language of its own, speaking directly to those who were willing to listen, without needing words. The room seemed to vibrate with every chord, every pause, and every subtle shift in tone. When the final note lingered and then faded, the cafe erupted in applause once again. This time it was louder, more heartfelt, filled with admiration and wonder. People stood from their chairs, clapping, cheering, and even some wiping away small tears. The older musician slowly made his way toward her, his face serious, but eyes bright with excitement. He introduced himself gently, careful not to startle her, and asked if she had ever had formal lessons. When she shook her head, he smiled, almost unable to believe it. He explained that her talent was rare, something that could not easily be taught, a natural ability that needed guidance to truly flourish. The girl felt a mixture of surprise and nervousness. She had never imagined that anyone outside her small circle of dreams would notice her music. She had always played for herself, for the joy of creating sound from nothing, and now strangers were praising her. The musician spoke of opportunities, of schools and teachers who could help her grow, and for the first time, the girl considered that there might be a life beyond just surviving each day, a life where her talent could be nurtured and celebrated. The other patrons, still captivated, began to ask questions and offer encouragement. Some suggested local music teachers, others talked about competitions and concerts. The cafe, once just a place to eat and chat, had become a small stage, a launching point for something that could change her life. She listened quietly, absorbing every word, her mind spinning with possibilities. The warmth of the food, the sound of the piano, and the attention of the people around her combined into a feeling she had never known. that of being truly seen, of being recognized for who she was and what she could do. Later, after the cafe had quieted down, the musician stayed behind to talk to her. He asked about her experiences, how she had learned to play, and what she dreamed of achieving. The girl spoke softly, honestly, about the long hours of practice, the old keyboard she had learned on, and the nights when she had nothing but the music to keep her company. The musician nodded, understanding immediately that she had not only talent, but determination and resilience, qualities that were just as important as skill. He offered to help her connect with teachers who could guide her, promising that with support, her talent could reach places she had never imagined. As the girl left the cafe that evening, she felt a strange mix of emotions, excitement, nervousness, and hope. She walked down the busy street, her stomach still full from the meal, but her mind buzzing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. She thought about her music, the people she had touched with her performance, and the new doors that might open if she dared to take the next step. For the first time, she felt that her life could be more than just surviving day by day. There was a world beyond, waiting for her music to be heard, and she was ready, finally, to step into it. The memory of that simple cafe, the smell of coffee, the warmth of the room, and the piano that had started it all stayed with her, a reminder that sometimes, the smallest moments could change everything. In the days that followed, the girl's life felt like it had shifted overnight. People in the neighborhood began to recognize her when she walked past, some nodding politely, others whispering excitedly about the performance at the cafe. She felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. She hadn't played for recognition before, only for the love of music. Now, it seemed as if the world had noticed her in ways she could barely understand. The musician who had approached her after the cafe performance kept his word. He introduced her to teachers and mentors who could guide her, and she met them in quiet rooms filled with pianos and sheet music. At first, she was shy, unsure if she truly belonged in those spaces, but her confidence grew with every lesson. Her fingers moved with an ease that made her teachers stop and stare, and soon they realized that her ability was more than natural talent. It was instinct, discipline, and passion all rolled into one. She practiced every day, sometimes for hours, losing herself in the sound of the keys. The piano was no longer just a tool for expression. It became a friend, a companion, a guide through her thoughts and emotions. Her mind wandered less, and her focus deepened. Every new song she learned felt like a new adventure, a story she could tell through her fingers. The music became a language she spoke without words, one that touched people deeply without them even realizing it. Word of her talent continued to spread. A local journalist heard about the girl and decided to visit the cafe to see for herself. She watched the young pianist play, and the article that followed painted a picture of a child prodigy, emerging from an ordinary corner of the city. Soon, more invitations came: small concerts, school performances, and community events. Each time she performed, her confidence grew, and her music became even more expressive. She learned to play not just the notes on the page, but the feelings behind them, understanding that every melody could carry emotion, every pause could tell a story. Even as the attention increased, she remained humble. She remembered the first meal she had received in exchange for a song, the cafe that had welcomed her, and the people who had listened so intently. Those memories grounded her, reminding her that her journey was not about fame or recognition, but about sharing the music that lived inside her. She carried this humility into every lesson, every performance, and every encounter with someone who wanted to learn about her journey. Her family, who had always struggled to make ends meet, began to notice the change too. They watched her practice, listened as she played in the evenings, and slowly began to understand the depth of her talent. They were proud, but more importantly, they were supportive. They encouraged her to continue, to take every opportunity, and to dream bigger than they ever thought possible. The young girl realized that she wasn't alone in her journey. She had allies and mentors who believed in her, even when she sometimes doubted herself. One afternoon, a local music academy invited her for a small performance. She was nervous at first, stepping onto a slightly larger stage than she was used to, with more people in the audience. But as soon as her fingers touched the keys, all fear disappeared. She played with a focus and emotion that left the audience breathless. They applauded with sincerity and awe, and she felt a rush of gratitude. Each performance became a lesson not only in music, but in life, learning to face nerves, to trust herself, and to connect with others through the universal language of sound. As she continued to grow, she discovered new challenges. Some pieces were difficult, with fast, complicated passages that tested her endurance and skill. Others demanded subtlety and emotion, requiring her to convey deep feelings through delicate phrasing. She embraced these challenges, realizing that the harder the piece, the more she could express. Every mistake became an opportunity to learn, every small success a confirmation of her dedication and talent. Along the way, she also learned about patience and resilience. Sometimes, her fingers ached from long practice sessions, or her mind felt overwhelmed by the pressure of performing for new audiences. But she reminded herself of why she played, of the joy it brought her and the connection it created with those who listened. She returned to the cafe often, quietly playing for herself and a few regular patrons, grounding herself in the place where it all began. It was a space of comfort, of memories, and of reassurance that no matter how far she went, the music remained hers to create and share. Her reputation began to grow beyond the neighborhood. Teachers and musicians from other cities heard about her, asking if she could perform at recitals, festivals, and small competitions. Each invitation was both thrilling and intimidating, but she learned to embrace the unknown. Each performance built her confidence, her skill, and her ability to connect with people through the piano. She learned that music was not just about playing notes, it was about touching hearts, creating emotions, and telling stories that words often could not capture. Even as she gained recognition, she remained focused on learning and improving. She studied old recordings, explored different styles, and experimented with improvisation. Her teachers encouraged her creativity, helping her understand that being a musician was not only about skill, but about expression, interpretation, and emotion. She realized that the world of music was vast, and that she had only just begun to explore its possibilities. Through all of this, she remained a humble and kind presence, never letting attention or praise change her core. She remembered the people in the cafe, the first meal she had received, and the quiet hope that had driven her to ask for a chance. She understood that her journey was about more than talent. It was about perseverance, courage, and the willingness to take risks even when the outcome was uncertain. The piano was not just an instrument. It was a bridge between her dreams and the world, a tool through which she could share her heart with others. As months passed, she became more confident in herself and her abilities. Each note she played told a story, each performance strengthened her resolve, and each lesson learned pushed her closer to her dreams. The young girl who had once wandered into a cafe, asking for a simple meal in exchange for a song, was transforming into a musician whose talent and heart could inspire anyone who heard her play. And though the journey was only beginning, she knew that with dedication, passion, and the support of those who believed in her, she could go further than she had ever imagined, touching lives with the music that flowed naturally from her soul. As her reputation grew, so did the opportunities that came her way. Invitations arrived for performances in other cities, recitals at schools, and even small music festivals. At first, the thought of leaving her familiar streets and the cafe where it all began filled her with nervous excitement. She had never traveled far alone, and the idea of performing for audiences she had never seen before was both thrilling and intimidating. But the support of her mentors and family gave her courage, and she decided to take the leap. Her first performance outside the city was a small recital in a quiet town. The venue was modest, a simple hall with a few rows of seats, but to her, it felt enormous. She took her place at the piano, her fingers brushing lightly over the keys as she took a deep breath. As soon as she started playing, the nerves melted away, replaced by a feeling of flow and connection. Each note seemed to reach the audience directly, drawing them into her world. She felt a thrill in seeing people listen so intently, their faces reflecting surprise, admiration, and emotion. After the performance, people approached her with kind words and encouragement. Some asked for tips, others just wanted to express how moved they were. The girl realized that her music had the power to reach people in ways that words could not. The thought warmed her heart, reminding her of the first time she had played in the cafe, when strangers had paused to listen to a simple song in exchange for a meal. Now, those moments of connection had grown into something much larger, but the feeling remained the same, the joy of touching hearts with music. As she traveled to more cities and performed in various venues, she also met other young musicians. Some were formally trained, some self-taught like her, but all shared the same passion. They exchanged stories, learned from each other, and played together whenever they could. These interactions broadened her perspective, helping her see that talent and hard work existed in many forms. She began to experiment with different styles and techniques, incorporating new ideas into her performances. Each new piece she learned became a chance to explore not just notes, but emotion and storytelling. Despite the growing attention, she remained humble and focused on her growth. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It required dedication, discipline, and a willingness to face challenges. Some pieces were complex and demanded hours of practice, testing her patience and endurance. Others were simple, but required subtlety and emotional depth. She approached each challenge with determination, knowing that each small improvement brought her closer to her potential. Alongside her musical growth, she also experienced personal growth. Traveling, performing, and meeting new people taught her about resilience, adaptability, and confidence. She learned to handle nerves, to trust her instincts, and to find calm in the midst of pressure. Every performance, whether large or small, became a lesson not just in music, but in life. She realized that the stage was a place of connection, a bridge between her inner world and the hearts of others. Her mentors continued to guide her, providing advice, encouragement, and opportunities for growth. They introduced her to composers, pianists, and teachers who had shaped the music world, allowing her to learn from their experiences. She soaked up every piece of guidance, understanding that her journey was a combination of natural talent and careful nurturing. Her teachers marveled at her ability to interpret music, to convey emotion, and to transform a written score into something deeply personal and alive. As she performed in more venues, she also began to receive invitations to competitions. These were daunting at first, filled with talented musicians from around the country, but she approached each one as an opportunity to learn and grow rather than a test of her worth. Each performance taught her something new about precision, about emotion, about connecting with audiences, and about handling pressure. Winning was not always the outcome, but each experience added to her skill and confidence, shaping her into a more complete musician. Through it all, she never forgot the cafe where her journey had begun. She returned whenever she could, playing for the regular patrons who had watched her first performance and for new visitors who were curious about the young pianist who had captured the hearts of so many. The cafe remained a sanctuary, a place where she could play without expectation, simply for the joy of music. These moments reminded her of the roots of her journey, keeping her grounded and humble even as her life expanded. Her growing skill and reputation also opened doors for collaborations. She played with other musicians, joined small ensembles, and experimented with different genres. Each collaboration taught her something new, from understanding the dynamics of a group performance to discovering how different instruments could complement each other. These experiences enriched her music, helping her develop a more versatile and expressive style. She learned that music was not just about solo performance, but about listening, responding, and creating harmony with others. As she matured, she also began to think about the impact of her music beyond just performance. She wanted to inspire others, to show that talent and passion could overcome obstacles, and that even small beginnings could lead to extraordinary journeys. She began to visit schools and community centers, sharing her story and encouraging young people to pursue their dreams. Her presence and music became a source of motivation, reminding others that determination and dedication could create opportunities where none seemed to exist. Despite the growing attention, she remained focused on the music itself. She continued to explore, experiment, and refine her skills. Each day brought new challenges, new pieces to master, and new stories to tell through her fingers. Her passion never waned. If anything, it deepened with each performance and each connection she made with her audience. She understood that the journey was ongoing, and that there was always more to learn, more to experience, and more to express. The girl who had once walked into a small cafe, asking for a meal in exchange for a song, had grown into a young musician whose talent, dedication, and heart could inspire anyone who heard her play. Each performance, each lesson, and each opportunity had shaped her, but the essence of her journey remained the same: a love for music, a desire to share it, and the courage to take the first step when no one expected her to. And as she continued to perform, to learn, and to grow, she carried with her the memory of that first moment, a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of courage can set in motion a lifetime of extraordinary experiences. As time passed, the young pianist's journey continued to grow in ways she had never imagined. Her small beginnings in the cafe seemed like a distant memory, yet it remained the foundation upon which everything else was built. Every performance, every lesson, and every encounter added depth to her understanding of music and herself. She had learned that talent alone was not enough. It required patience, dedication, and the courage to take risks. Even when the outcome was uncertain, she began performing in larger venues, filled with audiences who had come from different towns and cities just to hear her play. Each time she stepped onto a new stage, she felt a mix of excitement and nerves. But once her fingers touched the keys, all fear vanished. Music became her language, her voice, her way of connecting with the world. The audience was no longer just people watching. They were listeners, participants in the story she told through her melodies. Her performances began to draw attention from well-known music teachers and composers. They recognized her as a prodigy, someone whose natural talent was complemented by dedication and creativity. They offered guidance, helping her refine her technique, expand her repertoire, and explore new styles. She embraced their advice, understanding that mentorship was a key part of growth. Each lesson was an opportunity to learn something new, to see music from a different perspective, and to deepen her connection to the piano. Despite her growing fame, she remained humble and grounded. She remembered the first time she had asked for a meal in exchange for a song, the cafe that had welcomed her, and the people who had listened without judgment. Those memories reminded her that her journey was about more than recognition or applause. It was about sharing music, touching hearts, and inspiring others. Every note she played carried not just her skill, but her passion, her experiences, and her story. Her family, once unsure of how far her talent could take her, now watched with pride and support. They attended her performances whenever possible, cheering silently from the audience. They had seen her grow from a shy, hungry child into a confident young musician whose music could move anyone who listened. Their encouragement strengthened her resolve, giving her the confidence to continue exploring new horizons. The young pianist also began to understand the power of music beyond performance. She realized that music could bring people together, heal emotions, and inspire hope. She started visiting schools and community centers, sharing her story and playing for children who, like her once, dreamed of something greater. Her presence in music became a source of encouragement, showing others that determination, passion, and courage could overcome obstacles. She knew that her journey could inspire others to take their first steps toward their own dreams. As she matured, she faced new challenges. Some pieces were technically demanding, requiring hours of practice and concentration. Others demanded deep emotional understanding, teaching her to communicate feelings through subtle changes in tone and rhythm. She embraced each challenge, seeing it as a chance to grow and express herself more fully. Mistakes were not failures, but lessons, guiding her toward improvement and mastery. She learned to be patient with herself, understanding that growth was a journey, not a destination. Her travels also introduced her to diverse musical traditions. She discovered new rhythms, instruments, and techniques, which she incorporated into her performances. Each new style broadened her understanding and creativity, allowing her to blend different influences into something uniquely her own. She began to compose her own pieces, writing music that reflected her experiences, emotions, and dreams. Her compositions were personal yet relatable, touching the hearts of listeners in ways that resonated deeply. The young pianist's story became well known not just in her city, but across regions. Articles, interviews, and social media posts highlighted her journey from humble beginnings to a rising star. People were inspired by her courage, her talent, and her persistence. Yet, despite the attention, she never lost sight of the simple joy of playing music. Every performance, every practice session, was a chance to connect, to feel, and to share something beautiful with the world. She also learned the importance of balance. While she dedicated herself to music, she made time for rest, reflection, and moments of quiet. She revisited the cafe where it all began, playing softly for herself and a few familiar faces. These moments grounded her, reminding her of why she started and the joy that music brought her. It was a space free of pressure, where the music existed for its own sake, not for applause or recognition. Through her journey, she developed a deep sense of empathy and understanding. She realized that every person has a story, and music can bridge differences, offering connection and understanding. Her performances were not just technical displays, but emotional experiences that resonated with audiences. She learned to listen as much as she played, to respond to the energy of the room, and to let her emotions guide her interpretation of each piece. As she continued to perform, teach, and compose, she reflected on her path. The journey from a hungry child asking for a meal to a celebrated pianist had been extraordinary. Yet she understood that the essence of her success lay not only in talent, but in perseverance, courage, and the willingness to seize opportunities. She carried gratitude for everyone who had supported her, from the cafe owner to her mentors, family, and audience members. Each had played a role in helping her reach new heights. In the end, her story became one of inspiration. She showed that humble beginnings do not limit potential, that talent combined with hard work and passion can lead to incredible opportunities, and that music has the power to transform lives. Her journey reminded everyone that even a single act of courage, like asking for a meal in exchange for a song, can set in motion a lifetime of extraordinary experiences. The young pianist had emerged not only as a prodigy, but as a symbol of hope, perseverance, and the magic of following one's passion. And as she played each note, she knew that her story was still unfolding, that every performance was another chance to touch hearts, inspire dreams, and share the music that lived within her soul.